I did this poll in the community section on my YouTube channel just over a week ago, where I asked the question, who would win in a boxing match between Jake Paul and John Fury? And the reason I asked this is because John Fury recently said that Jake Paul couldn't beat him in a boxing match, much less his son Tommy. Now, as you can see, 80% of you guys did the sensible thing and picked Jake Paul to win. But 20%, and remember there was nearly 4,000 votes here, so this is still a lot of people, 20% are clearly part of the John Fury cult. Now, I like a John Fury interview as much as anybody else. I find him to be a tremendously entertaining character. He's very loud and brash and bombastic, talks confidently. I enjoy all the old school northern slang and phrases he comes out with, but that's where it stays for me. It's just entertainment. I don't get sucked into the John Fury mythology. And the John Fury mythology is really based around his bare knuckle days, which can't really be verified to any degree because a lot of the people that John Fury grew up with are now dead. The guy's nearly 60. So he makes a lot of claims about his bare knuckle days. And look, I'm sure John Fury's had his fair share of fights on the hard road. And of course, he went to prison for scooping a guy's eye out. A guy who was much smaller than him, by the way. But nonetheless, we know about that situation, that incident. So I'm sure he's had his fair share, but you can't verify what he did in his bare knuckle days the way you can verify what he did in his professional boxing career. And therefore, remember, back then, there was no social media. John Fury claims that he once beat an Irish bare knuckle champion and got paid $100,000 for it. But he can't remember the guy's name. I mean, that's convenient. If you beat a guy in a bare knuckle for $100,000, wouldn't you remember his name? So look, John Fury is a tough guy. I'm not doubting that. But I think his bare knuckle story is massively embellished. And he's not the only one. A lot of the guys from that era were doing the same thing. When I say that era, some people older than John Fury, but let's say within 15 years of his age, a lot of the guys from that era were doing that as well, to write books and embellishing their stories. I mean, Lenny McLean was a tough guy as well, but according to his cousin Frank Warren, his story is heavily embellished and loads of stuff is made up. So I suspect the same thing with John Fury. That is what most people seem to be basing their belief that John Fury can beat Jake Paul on, because you can't, if you've got any logic in your brain, base it upon his professional boxing record. There's nothing on this record that suggests at the age of nearly 60, he can beat Jake Paul. If he wasn't this big tough guy persona, and he wasn't the dad of Tyson Fury, if you just took him as a random ex-pro from the 90s who's nearly 60, and he came out and said, I can beat Jake Paul, I don't think any of these 20% would be picking John Fury, under those circumstances. So again, this is a guy in his prime who had 13 fights, 8 wins, 1 of them by knockout, 4 losses, 2 of them by knockout, and 1 draw. And he hasn't fought since 1995, nearly 30 years ago. You're telling me that after nearly 30 years of inactivity, at the age of nearly 60, John Fury is going to come out of retirement and beat Jake Paul. Jake Paul just beat Anderson Silva, who is over 10 years younger than John Fury. That entire time that John Fury's been inactive, Anderson Silva's been fighting at the highest level. Yeah, it's in MMA, but he's still been having, experience fighting people that whole time. And Anderson Silva is the best boxer that I've seen come out of the MMA world. Maybe there's somebody with better boxing ability than Anderson Silva, but I haven't personally seen them. So that, and of course, Jake Paul, again, just beat Anderson Silva, a guy over a decade younger than John Fury, who's been active, much more athletic than John Fury. So where are you guys going with this? This ain't a street fight. This ain't a thing where John Fury can get someone in a headlock and do his dirty fight. No, this is Marcus of Queensberry rules. How is he going to beat Jake Paul? Come on, people. Not only do I think Jake Paul beats John Fury, I think there's a very good chance Jake Paul knocks him out if they were to fight. John Fury hasn't taken a punch in a professional fight again, for nearly 30 years. And in his prime, he wasn't the most durable guy out there. He got knocked out badly by Henry Akinwande and Steve Garber. Now, Akinwande, I'm sure, hits a lot harder than Jake Paul. Steve Garber, I'm not so sure about, but Jake Paul hits plenty hard enough. And he's not hitting, if the fight were to happen, which I'm sure it won't, he wouldn't be hitting a 28, 29, early 30s John Fury. No, he'll be hitting a 60-year-old man in the face. People, you can't take the same type of punches. Your punch resistance is not the same at 60 as it was when you were 30. So if he's getting ironed out nearly 30 years ago, what do you think is going to happen now when he gets hit by a young guy like Jake Paul, who's, well-trained and is knocking a lot of people out? What do you think is going to happen? Come on, people. I think at best, John Fury gets battered over the course of 6 rounds or whatever, but manages to last the distance at best. And John Fury has a lot of heart. I watched his fights against Steve Garber and Henry Akinwande, and he showed heart in both fights. Against Akinwande, he was really trying, but, he got chinned. And against Steve Garber, he was actually winning that fight for my money. But he just got clipped. So he's tremendously brave, but that's not going to be enough when you're 60 years of age against a guy in his prime in terms of athleticism. Yeah, forget about the fact that Jake Paul's this YouTuber. For a guy who, don't even think about him as a YouTuber, just think about him as a novice pro who has some potential. Or you could even think about him in terms of being a novice amateur who has some potential. A guy who spars with professionals all the time, who's athletic, who can punch, who can move, he's got the coordination and the energy that you have at that kind of age. Think about someone like that going in with a 60-year-old ex-pro. He's obviously going to get the better of him. Come on, people. The only chance John Fury would have at all would be on the hard road because, you can use dirty tactics. And even then, I wouldn't be 100% sure that he would win, but I'll give him a much better chance in that situation. But in the ring, under Marcus of Queensberry rules, nah. Come on. It's ridiculous. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you're tired of the biased narratives and mass censorship on mainstream platforms, and you want to be part of a community of critical thinkers who love free speech just as much as you do, then come and join me on Patreon and access my weekly no-holds-barred, censorship-free podcast where we lift the lid on a wide variety of controversial topics. It's not mainstream friendly, it's not politically correct, but that's the whole point. We dare to stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. Just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called Hatman Hot Topics. You'll gain access to a minimum of 2 hours of exclusive content every single week, including podcasts, videos, interviews, live stream Q&As, as well as my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. Not to mention a vast back catalog of hundreds of hours of previous episodes. You can listen via the Patreon app with the option to download in high quality MP3. We've also got an Element group where you can come and chat and hang out with myself and other members. Unlike Discord, it has full end-to-end encryption, is decentralized, and is 100% censorship free. You can also send voice notes as well as much larger audio and video files than you can on Discord. So come and sign up on Patreon. There's no contract, there's no commitment, you can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a cup of coffee. So I'll see you over there. I'm out.